The mystery is no more.
Should I go into specifics about how the mystery was solved?
No. The mystery has been solved because Paula is a world-class detective. You might not think that based on the way that we podcast or anything, but she is really skilled, and she did all kinds of fact finding and problem solving, and I was really just so impressed by your gumshoe tactics.
My gumption.
No, gumshoe tactics.
What is gumshoe?
A gumshoe is a detective.
I've never heard that word.
Are you serious? Did you never watch Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
I grew up on that, and I play the video game all the time.
They talk about gumshoes all the time.
I also have selective memory, so like some words just like no.
I
got a message from
Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah, you're like 8 years older than me, so like your memory of certain things are gonna be way
so now
more...
you're just gonna be ageist about it.
Yeah, I am. Anyways.
Okay, the mystery was solved. All parties are innocent, and Paula did a great job, and I'm very proud of her.
No, what was ridiculous
is
That's
recorded now for all of history.
It is recorded, and it's okay. What I should have done was ask the person who I suspected first before I went through
suspected means like that carries with it the connotation that you thought they had done something wrong.
Right, exactly. So I didn't think they did anything wrong. So I was like, let me look at every viable option first.
Good. Okay.
Before I ask this person, only to find out that said person was a part of the things.
Who did nothing wrong?
She did absolutely nothing wrong.
To be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing wrong.
We're good.
But now we know that if you ever want to take and steal something from the church.
No, it's not stealing.
Okay, sorry. If you ever want to retrieve something.
There was nothing wrong. Nothing wrong was done. There was no wrongdoing.
For any future person, because what we've been also getting.
You are nuts.
No. There's something else to this, because there is a part of the church in the Faith Center where you cannot be seen. So not only did we have someone come in through a part of the church that to retrieve certain items, there is another character loose among us who is dropping off donation boxes of things that are 50 years old and leaving them there.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's happened twice a week.
I didn't know that.
It's
That's
happening
amazing.
every Friday. And Sandra has to take said items that smell like moth and mold to the dump.
No kidding.
And they're labeled for donation.
I had no idea.
I'm just saying.
That makes me so happy.
Why?
It shouldn't, but it makes me so happy.
No, and they make the effort.
This is actually a thing that priests will talk about a lot. Like
characters of church.
Well, there's that. Yeah, there's characters of church. No, what do you do when some well-meaning individual shows up with something that they want to donate to the church, and they've got it in their car, and they're like, "Here, Father, we want to give this to you," and it's absolutely not something that you can use.
Worthless things.
Like we're stuck, because it's like we have to appreciate the gift that the person's trying to offer,
that's true.
But at the same time, it's like, why would you bring me this?
I'm pretty sure.
Or why would you think that I can actually make use of this? This is not something that I can actually do anything with.
Pretty sure someone was having an estate sale and they were doing some cleaning.
Yeah.
And then just dropping them off here as if we know where things go.
Every once in a while, and this is the other challenge. Most priests, if you say, "I have some books," will go, "Yes, please." I would at least like to look through the books and see if there's anything worthwhile. If not to add to the parish library, then to add to my personal library. I will happily look through
the fact that there are like 2 boxes already on this table, and we have more coming.
Yeah, but those books are not really useful for us.
Some of them are.
Some of them are.
For some people.
Yeah, but most of them are.
Some for some.
Most of them will bring down to Pequot.
Oh, who's doing that?
Oh, we can just. we can bring those down anytime. That's the great thing about having a library that does a book sale, because see, books shouldn't get wasted.
That's true.
There are some books that shouldn't exist because they're bad.
Have you been reading?
I have been reading, actually.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, I am right now reading a book called The Lion of Munster. It's about
Munster cheese?
No,
I'm kidding.
It's about Cardinal Clemens August von Galen, who was the bishop of Munster. He was the first bishop appointed in Germany after the Nazis took power, and he spent his entire episcopacy preaching against Nazism.
Cool.
He spent his entire episcopacy calling out what they were doing.
And he survived?
He survived.
Wow.
Yeah. He actually drew up plans. I just read through this yesterday. He drew up plans for what should happen if he was arrested.
Wow.
So if he was prevented from exercising his ministry, he had a plan in place for who would do what in the event. And then if they got arrested, who would do what, so that there would always be somebody taking care of the necessary things that had to happen for the people of God, for the diocese and everything. But he had all these plans all drawn up. Yeah,
That's really cool.
it's really pretty fascinating, and he's like, it's interesting to read through. I haven't finished the story yet, so I don't know every detail, but how he wrote publicly and preached publicly about the errors of Nazism and how they violated human rights. And then how he also would correspond with the officials in the government to tell them why they were wrong, and how he would lodge protests constantly. And then how some of his protests and some of his writings were making it to Cardinal Pacelli, who was the Secretary of State for the Holy See, who later became Pope Pius XII.
Wow.
And then Pius XI, who published an anti-Nazi encyclical called Mitbarender, I don't know if I'm saying Mitbarender Sorge.
Say that 3 times fast.
It's one of the first encyclicals to be known not by its Latin name but by a German name, because he wrote it about the errors of Nazism. And it was Bishop von Galen who was responsible for having over 100,000 copies of it printed in Germany illegally.
Wow.
Because the Nazis didn't want anything like that being printed, and he had over 100,000 copies printed.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, this guy was tough.
The power of thought is crazy.
Yeah. Well, so this is actually something I've been thinking a lot about, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it today, unless you had something else, but I want to talk about this.
Well, it has to do with the devil, what I wanted to talk about.
Ooh!
But it has to do with thought.
Yeah.
So you want to start us off, and I can fill in with what I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, what I've been thinking about is how we have to really present the reason for our faith. And we have to encourage people to dive into the reason of our faith. See, what we believe is more than just a series of propositions. It's actually really well-founded. It's well-founded in the sources of revelation, in the sources of our tradition, but also in logic. So it's not just a proposition, oh, you should believe this. The proposition is the end result of all of these logical conclusions and all of this evidence. And now that goes for a whole lot of things, and I can't get into everything about it. Obviously, we don't have time to do that today. But it's really important for us to get into the reason behind our faith, and to understand that what the church teaches isn't something that it takes lightly. What the church teaches when it comes to moral teachings, when it comes to the sacraments, when it comes to just the creed, these are things that have been thought through and have a really deep rational basis, as well as a deep spiritual, divinely revealed basis. But so often we stop at, the church says this, and I don't like that. Or it challenges me. God bless you. She sneezed. We stop
I actually did sneeze, which is great because you didn't ruin it.
I didn't ruin your sneeze. A lot of times we stop at, the church teaches this. I don't like that. That makes me uncomfortable. I don't think that's true. And so we just sort of reject stuff. Well, when you take that approach, I like this thing that the church teaches, but not this thing that the church teaches. We actually never dive deeper intellectually, and we don't engage with what the church is actually teaching us, with what the content of our faith is. All right, so that's one part. But of course, as much as I'm saying that our faith, the Catholic faith, is not just a proposition. So it's not only here are a list of things that we should say that we believe. It's something more, because it's deeply rooted. The Catholic faith is also fundamentally about a relationship. It's about a relationship with someone. And so it's not only that we need to study our faith. We do. It's also that we need to dive into the relationship. That God himself desires a relationship with us. When you start to fall in love with Jesus, when you really open your heart to meeting him on that spiritual level, it's amazing how the other intellectual things, the propositions of the faith, start to fall in line, because you realize that they're all profoundly connected to what it means to strive to be a disciple of Jesus, to try to be one who loves Jesus.
In a way, you are doing what you say the prayer that St. Paul says, may I decrease so that he may increase. In other words, like,
that's
you were
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. Doesn't Paul quote him later on? I swear Paul quotes him later on. Anyways, somebody in the Bible. Bible. I did that on purpose.
That's good. I like that.
Well, he says that, in other words, I need to think of myself less, but really increase in the sense that I take on the mind of Christ himself.
Right.
Like, it's at the end of it's not about me, and that's what's so hard. And had a wonderful conversation with a family member this week. That is just it was so great. So this family member is starting to go to a new church, just had a baby. And I'm like, oh, this is great. We would get like headbutt with regard to like religion and with certain issues. Like if we were talking about abortion or something, I would try to say something, but then I usually just end up in tears because I don't know. Evangelizing in family is really hard.
Yeah, hardest.
It's the hardest. It's like they know you. They're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so they're way more vocal about what they're actually thinking with you than they would with like another person, you know. So some manners don't exist amongst family debates.
Yeah, you let some things go.
Yeah.
You let the guard down a little bit.
You really do. And so we've had a lot of conversations lately, how she's learning and understanding some things in a very mature way than she was 3 years ago. And, you know, this is the same person who said, I would never like go to church. I will never raise like my kid in the faith. Is about to have her baby baptized. That's
awesome.
Like
That's great.
And in a conversation yesterday, so we went to the church that she's going to, and she asked me, hey, do you want to come to church with me? I want to get to know this community. I was like, what? Like these are words in my, like, these are things that I could have never imagined, you know, and like so many prayers that I've been saying for this family member to like, Jesus, I want her to know you. And what's caught up in her head, and what happens with most people is the struggle with image and reputation. I can see that one being a thing. And that's what's something that I'm noticing in their relationship is like, well, I'm going to treat the sacraments as like a title, as, you know, an honorary thing or something like that, and not as a relationship. And to see her own transformation of like, you know, like, I don't really get it, but I'm understanding you don't just do it just to get a token.
Yeah.
You go because there's something more. It's about like learning how to be a better person. But she's slowly coming to these things.
Yeah,
but she's not trying to be dishonest in her approach to the sacraments, where most people aren't even willing to enter that part. Because
it's challenging, because if I'm going to say that I want to follow Jesus, if I'm going to say that, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus and I follow him, there are some tough things that he says, right? So often we like stopping at the Jesus tells us to love each other.
Exactly.
Which is true.
Yeah.
And there's nothing bad about that, obviously. This is a very important and central thing. And in fact, everything that we're going to find, it always points us back there. But Jesus teaches us to love one another, but he also says that not a single iota of the law will be changed. That the law of God still is. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. If you want to be my disciple, you must take up your cross daily and follow me. Jesus doesn't mince any words about this. So that if I'm going to be a follower of Jesus, it's not only that I have to love everyone and treat them the way that I want to be treated, but it's also I have to be ready to take up my cross and follow him. It also means I have to be ready for rejection. All of those things are present. And I think the natural human instinct is to say, I want to avoid any kind of suffering. And of course we do. Like who wants to suffer? I don't want suffering. I'm not looking for rejection. Go figure, right?
Right?
I want people to like me.
What?
I don't want to get rejected. I don't want people to think badly of me. I don't want people to think that I'm crazy because I believe certain things. But so often what we end up doing, and I don't think there's anything intentional happening here with this. It's just the natural human tendency. We resist embracing everything about what Jesus teaches us to be and to do, because we're nervous about being rejected in some other way. So this is the word that's kind of come for me for all of Lent. So here we are. It's the very, very, very beginning of Lent. Kind of the word that I think is thematic for me is the word consequence. And I got to thinking about it. Like, normally we think of consequences as something negative. So the consequence is that I do this, or parents use the word consequence as a euphemism for punishment. If you do that, there are consequences.
It's always a negative.
And yeah, it's very negative.
Yeah.
And they're trying to use something nice because they think punishment is too negative. They think punishment is too harsh, and they don't want their kids to grow up feeling afraid. So they substitute one word with another one that they then give a negative connotation to, and the kid grows up thinking that consequences are all bad.
Right.
And so it was a good try, but it's not going to work. Consequence, if we get to what it really means following after, but break it down even more and get into the Latin prefix con, sequentia, following, but con means with. So that means this is something that is following with, not necessarily following after, but it's something that accompanies.
At a random tangent.
Random tangent, go.
So why do we make pro and con lists? Con.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that because that's an abbreviation for contra, which means against.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's where my brain went.
No, that's good. I like that. So if we have consequences, let's break it down to mean following with, instead of just following after. Because there's a consequence to saying I want to be a disciple of Jesus. If I say I want to be a Christian, I want to be a Catholic, I want to follow Jesus, then there's something that goes with that and follows and continues and remains. The consequence of following Jesus is that the whole gospel and all the challenging teachings, all the challenging things that he calls me to do have to follow with that faith. I can't leave something off to the side. I can't leave part of the gospel over here because it's too difficult for me. I have to take the whole thing. To follow Jesus means to take everything. And so the consequence of my faith has to be that I embrace it all, even the things that I don't fully understand.
Right.
Now, the consequence of embracing things that I don't fully understand is the responsibility now on me to strive to understand more.
Okay. So I want to look at that
Go.
two other angles. So you take this looking at and having to receive everything. The one angle I want to look at is how Jesus sees us and looks at us and doesn't choose particular things to like about us. He chooses everything. He chooses the mess. Then
He chooses the mess.
Right.
Yes.
The other angle that I want to look at is with regard in community. In community, we might only pick and choose certain things, but not choose to enter fully into community. So I had given a talk on Tuesday night because it was great. So what I had noticed in my own personal life is sometimes I can look at something and only focus in on like the flaws of a situation or of a community or of an entity, or I can go to the other extreme and only look at the good. And in a sense, when you're entering into community with other people, or you're entering into this deep relationship with Jesus, it's never some, it's always all. The same thing is true of community.
Yeah,
it's
that's
never
very true.
just some, it's always all. And this is where I want to talk about the devil.
Okay.
Okay. And because if I take those two different realms, which we experience on the individual level, on the community level, you can also see that within a family level, within a marriage, whatever. Take that same idea applies to anything, where we do kind of want to pick and choose what might be good for us, or if we want to completely enter into a rejection of it, we're only going to focus on the flaws.
And enter into a rejection.
I'm sorry. Did I just say that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, what the heck was I trying to say? No. What? Now I just lost my thought.
I don't understand what that means.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm confused.
No. What I wanted to say, oh man, now I'm having a freaking brain fart.
You said fart.
Of course. Poop. Laugh. I'm losing it. When you enter, oh my gosh, what was I forget the word rejection. That's not what I wanted to say. You pick and choose what you want when you want, if it serves you. And if it's like, I don't really want to like this person, I'm just going to look at the faults that they have.
Okay.
Okay. If I really want to just like praise what the situation is. I'm only going to praise the good things and never acknowledge the messiness that's there, things that need growth and things that need improvement. I do that sometimes.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be essentially like with a person or
But think in any relationship, if you have a friend,
rose-colored glasses, for example,
you're
you see
going to
everything
have
is
a
great.
blind spot for your friend because you're going
Right.
to see the best things about them, and you might not always see their negative characteristics or traits.
So
We have that with ourselves.
Exactly, with ourselves.
I don't like seeing my faults.
No,
I know that they're there, but I don't like talking about them or thinking about them.
And what was so good for me this past week was I had 2 people reveal my faults to me.
Yeah.
In a very beautiful Christian friendship kind of way. I realized how much more prideful I am than I originally thought. No one likes to look at a mirror and be told that. And, my thoughts aren't always right. And I had 2 very good friends challenge me back to consider a particular situation we were talking about and to see it through another lens. Now, what I found so beautiful about this is in Ecclesiastes, there is a quote about what does it mean to have really good friendship and the implication of that friendship. And so it says, 2 are better than 1. They get a good wage for their labor. If the one falls, the other will lift up his companion. Woe to the solitary man, for if he should fall, he has no one to lift him up. Where a lone man may be overcome, 2 together can resist. A 3-ply cord is not easily broken. And in that experience, there was what I saw was a flaw, like a messy situation, and I had just augmented. I made that bigger than it actually was. And I had to have these 2 friends kind of call me out in such a way and reconsider, well, are you giving it your all? Are you doing this? And I sat with it. And then I was like, damn, the devil, because here's why someone had mentioned, they said the original sin wasn't Adam and Eve. Like the first sin wasn't Adam and Eve sinning. And you can tell me if this is wrong. It says the first sin was Satan disobeying God. Rejection. And so and what that meant was
it's different in that Satan's a fallen angel. So
Right.
the original human sin is the disobedience of Adam and Eve.
Yes.
But yeah.
Right.
But even there, it's still disobedience.
Yes, it's still disobedience.
Satan refuses to obey God, and Adam and Eve then also share
Right.
in the disobedience.
And so
Right
what
on.
you have though is heaven was the first to suffer a break of the community, because then you had a fall of angels.
Yeah.
And so Satan brings with him a whole community that they then become demons. And this break that heaven was the first to suffer is something that continues in our everyday life. And so what does Satan do is like when Satan wants to distort things, he will always hone in on you. Let's talk about the individual level. Like when you are trying to grow in a relationship with Jesus and it's really difficult, you feel like you have blocks and you're not sure what to think. And sometimes you think of other things as you're approaching a relationship with Jesus, thinking, I'm not good enough. Why does Jesus want me? I made this mess. Oh my gosh, I'm terrible. Like you can just think so negatively about you, but a lot of this has to do with like where are these thoughts coming from? And what the enemy does is that he latches onto your wounds and he latches onto lies that you already have of yourself and wants you to enter into a self-narrative, like a continual narrative about yourself in such a negative way, to the point that he only wants you to believe what he wants you to see. And if you don't have the vigilance and the grace to see otherwise, you might come to believe that that's what you are and that's who you are.
Yeah.
The same. So you take that on an individual level, bring it up another level. Now community, you might think that too. I cannot enter into community because I am going to be rejected. I have issues with abandonment, of feeling orphaned. Or like this community isn't good enough for me. Like this is messed up. I'm better than this. Like you can go with those extremes. And so it's like, so the enemy at every level, individual, family, community, church, is always wanting to augment the lies that are there, the wounds that are there. But what does Jesus do is that Jesus doesn't pick and choose your mess. He's like, I actually want to enter into all of it. And so there's a hesitation on my end where I only want to enter into the good stuff. Like, just give me the glory things, the praise things. But
Yeah,
if you
I want the part that makes me feel good.
right, I
Yeah.
want the part that makes me feel good. I want the part that only
I want the
affirms
affirmation.
me.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you avoid this part, but like Jesus doesn't do that with you.
Yeah.
He
Well,
doesn't.
so going back to what we started with, that idea of like, let's just really know the faith. Let's know the full content of what it is that we say we believe. Let's know everything that it is that Jesus teaches us and shows us. How often do people resist coming to the church or showing up for Mass because their thought is either, well, the church teaches this thing and I don't agree with it, but they don't actually know what the church teaches. We've talked about this before, how Fulton Sheen says there's not 1 in 100 people that actually hates the Catholic Church, but there are many people who hate what they think the church is, right? How often do people not really fully grasp what the church is saying and reject what they don't fully grasp? If they actually understood what the church was saying, they'd probably understand it fine, and be okay with it. Or I get this all the time at weddings, at funerals, people who have not been to church for a long time, and they greet me at the door of the church and they say, I'm not sure if I can actually go in here, Father. I think God might strike me with a lightning bolt or something. I'm like, well, then come in, let's find out. Because there's this sense of, yeah, I'm probably not a really good person. And these are people who
I definitely thought that when I started going to church. I thought the Catholic Center was going to fall on me.
But these are not people who are bad.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
But there's this presumption that you're a priest, so you probably hate me because I do all these things. I'm like, I don't know anything about you. You're just a person. I think I've told this story before of walking into a deli one day and a woman was walking out and she stopped and she just looked at me and like blocked the path for a second. And so I stopped because I wasn't sure what was going on. And she just said, I'm sorry, I freak out every time I see a priest. And I'm like, I'm sorry? I didn't know what to do because she just threw that at me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And she goes, it's not your fault. I'm afraid of priests. And so I was apologizing to her for her being afraid of priests, somebody who I've never met before and have absolutely nothing to do with. She's got, for whatever reason, she's got this fear of priests. But there was also something in her that was like assuming that I was against her. And that put her on the defensive.
And so see where our thoughts.
Yeah. Which if she hadn't done anything, I probably wouldn't even have noticed that she was walking past me.
Yeah.
But she was so caught up in that. And it's again not her fault. It's whatever happened, whatever has gone on in her life, that's what caused it. But this is the thing. When we get so caught up, you're absolutely right. The devil plays on that doubt and on that fear and lies to us. They're all looking at you. They're all judging you. The number of times I hear this, I actually got a note from a guy once. He said, I refuse to come to Mass on Christmas and Easter because I can't get a seat. And I go to Mass all the time, and all these people show up, and they shouldn't be there because it's my church. And I'm like, dude.
Older son in the prodigal story.
Yeah, I'm like, I understand the frustration with people who only show up the once or twice a year. I get that, but this is actually the chance that we might have to draw them back in. We got to try to bring them here. And
exactly.
I felt bad because he was understandably upset.
Yeah.
And yet it was misdirected.
Yeah.
And again, I don't blame the man for it. It's just misdirected. Same thing I think happens though for so many other things. We get defensive, but we get defensive about the wrong thing. Instead of what Jesus wants to reveal to us. And actually that's part of the reason that we get defensive, because something's being revealed to us.
Something's being triggered.
Something's being revealed to us of our own weakness, of our own sinfulness.
Or a place of hurt.
Yeah. We were talking before we started recording about watching BBC.
Yeah.
Watching the BBC for news right now, especially with all the stuff going on in Ukraine. And they were interviewing a guy who's an international lawyer. And he's done a lot of stuff with the International Criminal Court and everything at The Hague. Cool. So he's apparently been involved in trials about people who have committed war crimes and things. And they were asking him about what's going on in Ukraine right now. And he pretty bluntly said that Russia is guilty of war crimes. And the the anchor said, that's a very controversial statement. And he said, well, no, remember, the law serves the good order and the health of the people.
Right.
And what is happening is a violation of the law.
Right.
That's a war crime.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is simply the obvious.
Right.
It's not controversial. It's a fact.
Mm.
And it was such a fascinating way to put it. And I can't do it right because he had a British accent as he said it. And everything sounds more intelligent and more convicting when a British accent is behind it, right? There's just this.
Even Australian.
Oh, sure. But there's just this really
this
strength of conviction as he said it. And I'm not saying something controversial. This is just the truth. But even sometimes to observe a fact about ourselves, I did this thing and I should not have done it. Is hard for us. It puts us on the defensive because I don't want to deal with that fact, because negatively there is a consequence. What follows with that, and this is, I think, that following with part of consequence is so important, because what follows with it is the persistent thing. Like, I can do something and there's a consequence. I have to pay a fine, right? And it's $10, it's $50, it's $100, whatever it is. I pay the fine and it's over. So the consequence ends. But there's the deeper sense of consequence. It's something that stays with me. Because I've done something or made a decision, there are things that then stay with me permanently or for a very long time. So if I do something, especially if I sin, something stays with me. It's the effect of sin until such time as I repent. And the longer I hold on to that sin, the more ingrained it becomes in my personality. And the more I think anything that challenges this is not just a challenge to heal me, but is actually an attack. And that's where that lie from the devil gets augmented, like you're saying. Because now it's not just an observance of the fact. And in that, we call it the antiseptic light of truth, right?
Interesting. What a mouthful.
Yeah, but it's like it's just saying the truth.
It is.
There's antiseptic. There's no judgment. There's no infection coming in. We're just looking at what is, and examining that truth. Then, if I cooperate with the grace that God wants to give, it sends me running back to God. If I listen to the lies of the devil, it sends me running back into the darkness. Right.
There's that's so good. Going back to what you were just saying about having a hard time fully embracing the fullness of truth. What I've seen is when people are rejecting church teaching or they're doing this, it always comes down to something really personal. Always. Every single time. Like, you don't actually reject it, but right now there's a part of your heart that has been hurt in the past. And this is challenging that. This is kind of opening up an old wound. And this is an area that is in need of healing. And if people understood, like, whatever it is that is really, coming after your heart, is the Lord trying to get in there. The Lord trying to restore and reorder what has been disordered or what has been harmed. And
yeah, but so what's the response so often from us?
We do it all the time. We're like, push away.
Yeah,
don't touch it.
When God wants to actually bring healing to that thing, to that place, and part of the way for that healing is to come to understand what our faith teaches us about ourselves and about our relationship with God. But so often the idea is, no, I'm fine where I am because I've learned to live with this wound.
Yeah.
I've learned to live this way.
Yeah.
And because I've learned to live this way, if I allow any healing to take place, that might disrupt everything about what I do and how I spend my time.
What I've built that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
Like that I can do it on my own. And then you move into a place of self-reliance. Yeah. Like where your soul is burdened and tired.
How many times have you seen that person, though, who had built up that self-reliance, had built up their own world?
Me.
And then it's actually when they allow God in, when they open up their heart just that little bit more, that's when something really transforming starts to happen. And all that stuff that they had built up, there's nothing bad about it.
Yeah.
They haven't built up bad things.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden they're able to start to embrace more what it is that God has in store for them.
The devil wants us to fear it. He wants us to fear God's working power. Which is crazy because in some way you're like, you want it, but then like you don't want it and you're like, no touchy, like you can't go near this.
There's also that he wants us to fear personal change,
Yeah.
personal holiness.
Mm-hmm.
If I start to try to be holy, then I'm gonna have no more fun. I'm gonna lose all my friends. If I start trying to live according to the commandments, I'm gonna have to give up everything.
Yeah.
And in fact, we find that we gain so much more. This is it goes back to like the Bells of St. Mary's. You ever see the Bells of St. Mary's?
No, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's Bing Crosby, Ingrid Bergman. Fantastic.
Oh, that's what.
Fantastic.
Is this like about school kids? Like
Yeah,
school?
it's a school, St. Mary's school.
Okay.
Ingrid Bergman famously teaches a boy how to fight his bully. And she like teaches him how to box.
Oh,
It's
how
hysterical.
the 60s are so different from today.
I think it's earlier than the 60s. I think it's in the 50s. Yeah. Anyway, but she like teaches this boy how to fight back against his bully. The nun teaches this boy. It's so cool. I love it. It's fantastic.
Maybe we should be teaching that in Catholic schools.
But I think sometimes if there was more punching allowed in schools, we'd have fewer bullies. I know that's controversial, but it's also a fact. But
I mean,
Ukraine.
That's what I mean.
Right?
I'm just saying that.
They're punching back. I love these guys.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
My favorite is like the worships at the
Yeah,
island.
we can't repeat that.
But I was like,
we want to leave Catching Foxes as the only Catholic podcast that has an explicit rating.
I saw that and I was like, yeah, you do that.
Well, so sidebar. All right, going off tangent just a little bit here. This morning, President Zelensky had this great line. He talked about how a cathedral in one of the cities, I can't remember which cathedral it was,
St. Sophia,
had been hit by bombs.
The really ancient one from the 11th century.
I'm not sure which one. Because I picked up kind of halfway through the story, but he was commenting on the fact that the cathedral had been hit, and he said this is a place of refuge for people who are believers and non-believers. Now he's Jewish.
Yeah.
This has become a place of refuge for people who are believers and non-believers, and it's now been struck by war. This is not acceptable, and he said you cannot hide from God.
Oh.
And it was a very, very powerful way to say it. But then he also said, we as Ukrainians, we believe, we have faith in God.
Wow.
And you cannot shake our faith.
Wow.
And it was very powerful the way that he put it, because it was such a unifying statement, I thought.
It's kind of like he's David.
This dude is really cool.
This dude is amazing.
I like him a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, but what was the sidebar? That was it, I guess.
That was the sidebar. That was a very long sidebar.
I thought I was going to go somewhere else with it. I don't remember.
All right. So I do have a question that I can ask for those of you guys who are listening as a reflection for the material that we just did.
So we're not answering anything.
No. This is just a question.
Shutting up.
The question for you is, the first thing is, how have you experienced the fall in community life, family life, at church or at work? Kind of like you got to know what you're working with. So like, how have you personally experienced that? And then the follow-up question to that is, what are the deceptions that the enemy has you believing? Use that as a place to start. And then, enter into that engagement, entering into the tension. Is like, the Lord holds a lot of things in tension, like joy and suffering. Like he holds our goodness with our messiness. And that's what it means for us to really kind of enter more deeply in our own discipleship, is in a way, like I'm being asked to hold in tension, like a lot of these things in this world, but obviously with grace, I'm able to do that. So that is my question is,
love it.
Yeah. What deceptions am I believing from the enemy? Decepticon.
Well,
Sorry.
let's add then a prayer intention.
Yeah.
Right. Because if we're gonna confront that question, what deceptions have I believed? What lies about myself have I believed? Or where have I hesitated to embrace the truth about myself, about my Catholic faith? Then let's add the prayer intention, because otherwise we can just think too negatively.
Right, and you get stuck in there. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
No, it's time for scrupulosity.
But the prayer intention to say, Lord, open my heart.
Yeah.
Lord, help me to find healing.
Help me to see
from that wound, and help me to move confidently and to trust you that whatever my weakness might be, you can heal it, and you'll carry me through. Yeah.
This is this is from Mark 2:17. He says, now as Christians, we understand that we are all sinners and that Christ came not to call the just, but sinners. What? Well, it was part of it. I'm just reading the last part.
Oh, because I was like,
that's not it. That's not it.
Now as Christians, Mark doesn't say anything about Christians. What are you talking about?
He doesn't. But the last part is he came not to call the just, but to call sinners.
Right. Yes, that part. Okay. I'm like,
that part. But
what Bible are you reading?
The Paula translation. Paula has a Bureau of Investigation. She's coming out with her new edition of the New Testament.
All right. Well,
we're about to make a line of.
Look, I might have some theological quibbles with the Church of Paula here, but
no, there's no Church of Paula. But what I find so comforting about that is that we don't have to fear that we need to be presentable to come to Jesus, because he didn't come for the just. He came for sinners. He came for your mess. He came for the brokenness. Like, we don't have to. And so can I say yes to entering into my own messiness? Because only if I'm able to do that, then I can enter into the messiness of community life and family life and whatever there is, and enter into those places from my own transformation that I've had in and through Christ. I can now take Jesus into those areas.
Again, consequence. If I'm going to be a disciple of Jesus, then just as a negative consequence stays with me and follows me because of the thing that I've done, so the decision to follow Jesus and to be his disciple follows us. And Jesus comes with us. So it's actually a form of accompaniment.
He says that. He always promises his presence.
Yeah. So it becomes a form of accompaniment now. The consequence of being a disciple of Jesus is that we have him with us. But even though he's with us, there are still ways that we can resist. There are still ways that we can refuse to listen. But he's going to keep talking. He's going to keep speaking to that place in our hearts that needs him. He's going to keep persistently knocking at the door. That's why he says it. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Right. And then you see that. Have you seen that painting? It's very famous. That this artist made this painting of Jesus knocking at the door.
Where his hand is like this? Is just his hand?
Nope. It's Jesus knocking at the door.
Nope.
And the people said, there's a problem. And he said, what's that? And he said, there's no handle on the door.
Oh,
and he goes, that's because it's on the inside.
Side. Yeah.
And it's really kind of funny because it's a nice enough painting. It's not the most earth-shattering thing, but that little detail that people noticed makes the painting matter.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of thing that I would say, oh yeah, we should definitely have that hanging up somewhere.
Are you sure?
But it really matters.
Yeah.
When you understand that story behind it.
Well, God has been waiting for me the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's going to keep knocking at the door, and waiting for us to allow him to come into the darkness of our lives, to the messiness of our lives, to come into the joys and the blessings of our lives. He's just going to keep knocking at the door, asking for that invitation.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
That's all I got.
Thanks, Paula.
Yeah, thanks, Padre.
This is Roar Like the Lamb.
I'm Paula Peña.
Father Sam Kachuba.